Well, hey everyone, welcome to the Ridge Community Church Online. It's great to be with you today wherever you are joining us from. Our vision as a church is to bring the hope of Jesus into every home, which means we hope that our time together would inspire you to take your next step on your journey of following Jesus. My name is Tyler and I serve as our online campus pastor. And if you're new with us today, I want to extend a special welcome to you. It's a big deal for you to spend part of your day together with us. And I want to invite you to actually connect with the Ridge. And here's why I want to invite you to do that. We have a number of great things coming up right around the corner, things for your kids, things for your teenagers. Ridge groups are right around the corner, as well as opportunities to serve and make a difference in our local communities. And we want you to be a part of that. And so the way that you can be a part of that is by filling out what we call a Let's Connect form. It's just a short form that just takes you a minute to fill out. You can get that by scanning the QR code that you'll see on the screen below me, or just text the word connect to the phone number you see below me. We'll shoot you that form right back to you in a text message. Fill it out. And then what's going to happen is we're going to email you about all of the opportunities that you can take for your next step on your faith journey. Well, a few weeks ago, I was watching one of my neighbors put a for sale sign in their front yard of their front yard, and I realized, hey, why are you guys moving? I asked them, and they told me about their aging parents that are across the state, so they wanted to move and be closer to them, and they were just looking forward to going and helping them out. And I did what any neighbor would do after I got done talking with them. I went to my house, I pulled out my phone, and I looked at what they listed the house for, and so we moved in the neighborhood a few years before that. I was surprised to see how much more they listed their house for than what my wife and I paid for our house just a few years prior to that. And that's because we know the housing market, it's been kind of up and down, it's been kind of nuts lately over the last few months and the last couple of years. And anyone who's ever had to buy a house or sell a house during this time has known that. And you also know this. Well, why is that? Well, it's the value of something is what someone is willing to pay for it. Now, the reason why I bring this up is it's directly related to this idea that our lead pastor, Mark, is going to talk about in just a little bit as we continue the series that we've been in called The Great Disconnect, when we're talking about what does it mean to get the full benefits of following Jesus that Jesus has promised us. And we'll hear from him in a little bit, but before we do, we're actually going to head over to our auditorium and we're going to join our band as we spend some time singing to God together. Let's go ahead and do that right now.
Hey, if you were here with us last week in person or watched us online, we learned a new song called The Goodness of God. And the lyrics of the song just remind me of a prayer. And it does a really great job just acknowledging how good and faithful God is. And we talk a lot about how to live a life of worship and what that means. And it's not a part-time gig. And the lyrics of this next song, the words say, from the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. And that seems so simple, right? Like we should all be doing that. But it's not for a lot of people, like myself. And so, it's just so good that he deserves our praise all day long. And even just being present here last week during worship, it's just something that just really moved me, especially during that introducing that new song together, and just hearing just everyone worship together is just so awesome and impacted me so much. And it just shows that God is moving. There's something happening in this space, and I'm all for it. And so my challenge here today for you all is, and myself, is will you go deeper? Will you continue to lean on God for whatever that's on your plate, whatever that's on your heart? Will you lean on and lean into Him? And so as we sing this next song, let's just do that. Let's use this space and let's pour out our praise and our thanks to Him.
I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. And all my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God all my life. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. And I love your voice. You have led me through the fire in the darkest nights. You are close like no other. I've known you as a father. I've known you as a friend. Oh, I have lived in the goodness of God. Oh, and all my life you have been faithful. Oh, and all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Hallelujah. And all my life you have. Sing it out. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Come on, church, let's sing this dance together. All my life. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God. I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God. And I will sing of the goodness of God.
Throughout this series, we've been learning in The Great Disconnect that Jesus has invited us all to follow him, and to follow him is to be in a relationship with him where we end up making a same impact that he has made on others. In fact, when we look at the life of Jesus, we realize Jesus, no one had more impact on this world than Jesus. Through his teachings and the way that he lived his life and the way that he healed others and his miracles. And then, of course, through his death and resurrection and how he paid for your and my sin. Jesus just radically just changed this world for the better. And he invites his followers to have the same impact as him. In fact, one of the biggest ways that we can have an impact like Jesus is through serving on a team. Now, why serving on a team? Well, when we serve on a team, we use our God-given gifts that he's given each of us to actually go and build and live for his kingdom rather than our own kingdom. In fact, the other week, I was actually hanging out with some guys who serve in our 4th and 5th grade Ridge Kids team, and they were hanging in our backyard, and they were talking about their team, and they were laughing together about the other team members that they serve with, and they were talking about the kids that they get to serve, and they were having a really good time. So I just asked them, I said, hey guys, you guys are really good guys. I mean, you're successful in your jobs, you love your families well, I mean, you're really busy, I mean, you're doing all these good things. Why do you love serving on a team so much? And they just kind of looked back at me and they just kind of smiled and laughed and said, there's a couple reasons. I mean, they started talking about the friends and the friendships that they're making as they were actually serving on a team. They said, hey, when we serve, we know that we are actually making an impact on kids because we realize that they are making a difference in their kids as they're seeing some of these kids that they're serving actually take steps to get baptized. And they said, as they're doing that, it's building their faith as well. And they said, hey, we just love seeing the difference that we get to make. And that's what we want for you as well. We want for you to be able to make a difference and make an impact as you serve on a team. In fact, we know that God has given you some gifts and abilities to serve on any of the number of teams that we offer here at the Ridge. In fact, we have teams that you can serve online wherever you are and welcome our guests who join our online services on Sundays and throughout the week. We have teams that you can actually serve at one of our locations here in Greenfield or Oak Creek, Franklin, a location that we're going to open up in a couple of months that serve our kids, that serve our students, that welcome our guests, that put together and allow us to produce the services that we have so we have a great experience there. We have teams that serve throughout the week, that serve behind the scenes to help make sure that what is done on the weekends is carried out. We have teams that serve as maintenance teams in our facilities to make sure that our equipment is well maintained. And we even have teams to help ensure the safety of those who attend the Ridge. I mean, we have a number of different teams that you can use any of your God-given gifts to make a difference and make an impact like Jesus has made on us. And so what we want to invite you to do is to try out serving on a team. And for you to actually try out to serve on a team, the way that you can get started is actually by texting the word serve to the phone number that you're going to see below me. And then we're going to text you back a link where you can click on the link and read about all of the different teams that we have where you can actually try out serving. You can read about one and you can choose one. And we want you to choose one that piques your interest, that is best aligned with the gifts that God has given you. Now, when you sign up to serve, you're not signing up to serve every week or for every service. In fact, there's a schedule. You'll be trained, and so that way you'll have the ability to actually go ahead and have a great time serving. And actually, if you try one and it wasn't like the best fit for you, we want to help you get in one that's the best fit for you. So you just let your team leader know and say, hey, this wasn't the best fit for me. They'll get you to the right team. So go ahead, fill out that link, submit your email, submit your phone number, and then what's going to happen is a team member is going to be in touch with you in a couple days, and they're going to schedule you for an orientation and training so that you'll have a great first experience for serving on a team. So you go ahead and make an impact like Jesus has made an impact on us and try out serving on a team. Well, another way that we make an impact and make a difference for those around us is by giving financially to the vision of the Ridge, which is to bring the hope of Jesus into every home. Because when we give, we actually make the things that we do possible so that we can bring the hope of Jesus into every home. So I'm going to invite all of us to just take a moment. We can give together digitally. You can find out all of the different ways you can do that by visiting the website that you see below me. And then while we're taking this moment and giving together, I want to encourage you just to ask yourself the question, hey, how can I serve and make a difference and make an impact like Jesus has invited me to do? So let's take a moment and do this together, and then we're going to head back to our auditorium and hear from our lead pastor, Mark.
It's the most exciting thing you can do with the inside of a cake. Introducing the Betty Crocker Bacon Film.
What's squishy, stretchy, and transforms almost anything? Foam is fun you can feel. Roll it, mold it, or cover it. That's the way you foam it. Look, now you can turn anything into a fabulous foam creation. Tired of looking like a fool when your cakes aren't cool? And why do tiny cupcakes take so long to make? Get in the spotlight with Big Top Cupcake, the fast and easy way to make colossal cupcakes that are up to 25 times bigger.
Say hello to the Pillow Pets. Pillow Pets are
Is your dessert so boring it's left your family snoring? Not anymore. Introducing the original Chocolate Factory.
All right. How many of you have really tried to do something challenging in your life, and because it was so challenging, you found out that you had to overcome just some huge obstacles, and as a result, you did it, and it was just so gratifying for you? How many of you have had that experience before in your life? All right, we have overcomers here. That's wonderful to know. Years ago, I started to get back into running, and I completed actually a 10K race, 6.2 miles, and then right when I get done with the race, a friend of mine who was at the race as well, he said, "Hey, how would you like to run a marathon with me?" I said, "Yeah, I would love to do that." Now, he failed to tell me it was going to be in 3 months from that time, but I had already committed to it, and he said, "Okay, now you're in." Well, to do that, I had to overcome just some huge obstacles. You know, for example, I had to go from running 6.2 miles, which was my farthest at that time, to running 26.2 miles in 90 days. I also had to lose a bunch of weight if I was going to do that. Another obstacle is when you train for a marathon, it's like, you know, it's a pretty aggressive schedule and all that stuff, and so I had to rearrange a bunch of my schedule to do that. And then probably the biggest obstacle was talking my wife into letting me do it, which I was able to do that. Now, I was able to do it, barely, okay? And I tell you, being able to complete a marathon is one of the most physically demanding and challenging things I have ever done. In fact, my toenails have never looked the same since I did that years ago. But because of the challenges that I had to overcome, it's one of the most gratifying things physically that I've ever done in my life. I mean, I look back at that and go, man, you can never take that away from me. Well, today we're continuing in our series called The Great Disconnect, where we are talking about what many of us are experiencing in our faith right now, and that there is this disconnect between the promised benefits that we're told of following Jesus and our actual experience of following Jesus. And so our goal for this series is we're talking about how do we close the gap of that disconnect, because those benefits that are promised to us are real, and we can really experience those things. Now, today what I want to do is I want to talk about what I would think is the biggest obstacle for many of us in our faith journey. You know, for some of you think your biggest obstacle is intellectual. And you're like, well, I've got questions. You know, I'm not sure if I believe in all the Bible, and why does God allow bad things to happen in the world? And, you know, how does science and faith kind of intermix with each other? You know, I have questions about blank. For some of you, your biggest obstacle, you think, is emotional. And, you know, faith is okay for you as long as it doesn't conflict with what you think and what you feel or how you live your life or how you want to live your life. Now, here's the thing. These obstacles are real, and I want to encourage you to wrestle through those obstacles, but you may not realize this, but those obstacles aren't actually your biggest obstacle. Those obstacles that you have are actually pointing to or a part of a bigger obstacle. And here's what the obstacle is. That to follow Jesus is now going to cost you something. And you're not sure and you're not convinced if it's worth the cost. You know, as we've been going through the last few weeks, we have been talking about, as I mentioned earlier, just the benefits, the promised benefits of following Jesus. But for us to experience those things, we've got to do what we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks. That we just can't believe in Jesus, that we actually have to follow Jesus, and we have to follow Jesus as King. And we talked about that last week, and we said to follow Jesus as King means we have to align our life with Him, and we have to be willing to do whatever He says to do. And as we take steps to do that, at some point, we're going to get to a place where there's going to be a price to pay for following. And we don't like that. And so what we do is we hit the brakes, and then we come up with all sorts of excuses. And we say things like, well, I've got intellectual questions, and, you know, I think this, or I feel that. But underneath all those obstacles are the real obstacle. And the real obstacle is you've reached a place where now to follow is going to cost you something, and you're not sure that it's worth it to keep following. Now, if this is you, good news for you. We're not the only ones to struggle with this very thing. The people that were closest to Jesus struggled with this as well. In fact, we're going to take a look at a passage where they actually did. Now, just a little background on this passage that we're going to talk about. Jesus has a large group of people that are following him, but Jesus realizes that most of them, they're just along for the ride. And so Jesus is going to expose them by doing some teaching. And in the teaching that he does, he talks about the cost of following him. And so here's what Jesus says. He said, Jesus and the disciples went on to the villages around Caesarea Philippi. On the way, he asked them, well, who do people say that I am? And so Jesus asks a big question. He asks the identity question. And identity is an important one because everything from our life flows from our identity. And so they replied, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others, one of the prophets. Now, John the Baptist was actually Jesus' cousin, and he had recently been beheaded, but there was rumors that he was still alive, much like Elvis today. And then he says, but what about you, he asked. Who do you say I am? Peter, of course, speaks up, as you often do. You are the Messiah. And this is a very significant answer, and we looked at this last week, but here's what Peter was saying. Hey, Jesus, I believe that you are God's king that was sent to be our king. And the Jews were waiting for a long time for God to send his Messiah. And so Peter's saying, hey, Jesus, we think that's you. And then Jesus, he warned them not to tell anyone about him, which they're a little confused at this time. They're thinking, oh, Jesus, we should tell everyone about you. So Jesus has just told them the best news they have ever heard. It's like, you've just won the lotto type of news. But then Jesus takes this conversation in a direction that they never expected. Here's what Jesus says. He then began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and after 3 days rise again. Now, I can't even imagine what they were thinking at this point. Because, they have just been told, okay, Jesus is their long-awaited king, and now they're expecting Jesus to tell them all these grand plans that he have. But instead, here's Jesus' message. Your leaders are going to turn on me and kill me. I hope you'll follow me after they do. And then he spoke plainly about this, and Peter took him aside, and I love this, and began to rebuke him. And so Peter's having none of this talk. And so he pulls Jesus aside and he says, listen, negative Nancy, you need to stop being so negative. Everywhere you go, there are crowds all over the place. And so you're famous, and because you're famous, I'm famous. My social media stuff is blowing up. Millions of people are watching my TikTok videos of the healings and the teachings and all that good stuff. Hey, listen, Jesus, what is the talk on the suffering and being arrested sort of stuff? Listen, you are the Messiah. You heal people. Stop with all the negative talk. Well, of course, Jesus responds. But when Jesus turned and looked at his disciples, of course he rebuked Peter. And listen to what he says. Get behind me, Satan. Now, just a little side note. It is not a compliment when Jesus calls you Satan, all right? So this is not a compliment for Peter. And then he says, you do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. Now, what Jesus says here is so practical, not just for them, but for us, because it gets at the heart of our struggle. You see, Jesus is saying this, hey, Peter, you've enjoyed following me because it's benefited you. You're really following me, not for me. You're really following me for what it is and what it does for you. So, Peter, I just want you to know, you haven't really been following me this entire time. Now, from here, Jesus uses this as a teaching moment. And not just for the disciples, but for the entire crowd. And so he gathers everybody together, and then as he gathers everybody together, he tells them the cost of following him. And what Jesus says here, I think this is one of the most challenging, if not the most challenging things that Jesus said. Here's what he says. Then he called the crowd to him, along with his disciples. And he said, whoever wants to be my disciple, and we looked at that week on disciple just means follower. That's the starting point of it all. And listen to this. They must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Now let's back into this a little bit. Okay, take up their cross. Now we hear cross and, we get warm and fuzzies, because we got cross earrings and we got cross necklaces and we got cross t-shirts and we see crosses on buildings, and so we're like, oh man, that's kind of cool when we think about it. But they did not have warm and fuzzies when they heard this. You see, for this group, their landscape was littered with crosses. And people that were hung dead on crosses for days on end because the Romans left them there because they wanted to scare people into submission. And so for them, the cross was a symbol of death, so this scared them to death. But then Jesus said, you first, you must do this. You must deny yourself. Now, I think we hear this message and we go, man, that probably wasn't very popular back then. Well, let's be honest. I think this message is even more unpopular today because every day we're bombarded with messages that say the exact opposite of what Jesus is saying. You see, every day we're bombarded with messages that tell us all about self-fulfillment, that we should do whatever and wherever and wherever as long as it makes us happy. I think one of the most practical examples for self-denial is health and fitness. I mean, you think about this, we tell each other, okay, we're gonna get up early, we're gonna go work out at the gym, okay, we're not gonna eat chocolate, and we're gonna eat kale, and we're gonna tell everybody we love it, but let's be honest, we hate it, okay? But we eat it anyways, and it's all about feeling good and looking good. I was talking to a friend of mine a couple weeks ago. He's not really the big workout type, and he says to me, he goes, oh, I have started to do CrossFit. I'm like, you doing CrossFit? Why would you do that? And he goes, well, I want to get ripped, and I'm starting to get ripped. And when you think about working out and health, listen, it's important, and I think all of us should do it. But it can also become a self-mechanism to our own self-fulfillment. You see, we can't imagine the good life without us getting what we want. I mean, if I can't get what I want, the assumption is then I can't be happy. But Jesus says this, I want you to deny yourself. And the key word here is yourself. Now, the yourself that Jesus is talking about, or what he's not talking about, he's not talking about that part that makes you unique, the part that God made you unique as an individual. For example, I'm one of those individuals that loves to take the different personality assessments and different things like that, so I can, kind of know who I am and all that stuff. And so I've taken the DISC assessment, and I'm a high D. I've taken an Enneagram test, which are really popular right now, and I'm an 8. I'm also extremely introverted. You're like, well, you're on stage. Oh, yeah, but, I'm scared to death every time I'm up here, and so I'm very introverted. I also love to have ketchup on my steak, and I love kitty cats. Now, when Jesus says, deny yourself, he's not saying, I want you to deny your 8-ness. Hey, by the way, I want you to deny that introverted side of you. Now, he might say, you need to deny the kitty cat loving thing. I mean, I get that. But he's not saying, deny the things that how God made you unique. The denying yourself that Jesus is talking about is he's talking about this idea that is synonymous with an idea we see throughout the New Testament. And it's found in this word right here, the flesh. And when he talks about the flesh, here's the definition of the flesh. The flesh is that part of us that is bent towards self-gratification. That the flesh are those feelings and desires that are constantly moving us towards doing whatever we want to do. And many of those things that we're doing what we want to do are actually the opposite things that God wants us to do. And for many of you, you've experienced this very thing because you've experienced this inner tug-of-war before. The tug-of-war went like this. Well, I know this is what God wants me to do, but I'll be honest, this is what I want to do. I mean, I know I should go to church, but I'd rather sleep in and watch it on the couch. Hey, I know I should say I'm sorry to that person I've wronged, but I'll be honest, I don't really want to. Hey, I know I should pray, but I'd rather watch more of that series on Netflix. You see, the thing that Jesus is talking about, that is in all of us. And so when Jesus says, deny yourself, He's saying, I want you to deny the flesh and all of the disordered desires and feelings that are driving you to make the decisions that you do. Now, most of us, we hear that and we say, okay, well, why would I want to do that? Well, Jesus anticipates this. And so here's what Jesus says. He says, whoever wants to save their life, well, they're going to lose it. But whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? Now, I want to lock into this word soul for a minute. When we hear the word soul, here's what we think of. We think of that immaterial part that just floats up to heaven when we die. I mean, we see that in cartoons all the time, you know. And so that's what we think of when we think of soul. But the word that Jesus used here for soul is where we get our word psychology, or literally soulology. And so the idea is, it's this idea of wholeness. And so here's what the soul is. The soul is the integration of the whole you. And so when you think of your soul, I want you to think of this. Think of your body, I want you to think of your mind, I want you to think of your emotions, I want you to think of your will. All of the immaterial and material part of you wrapped up together is your soul. And so the goal of spiritual growth is to integrate your soul so everything is harmonious, and we experience that when we follow Jesus and we follow him as King. Now, I want to put the passage back up here again, and I just want you to notice something. So Jesus says, whoever wants to save their life will lose it, and he uses will lose it, but whoever loses their life will save it. Notice, this isn't a command. This is Jesus making a statement saying, this is actually how life works. And so Jesus really gives us two options. And here are the two options he gives us. Option A is, okay, you can deny Jesus and follow yourself, and in essence, you will lose your soul or lose life as you want it. And option B, you can deny yourself and then follow Jesus, and as a result, find your soul or find life as you want it. Now, if I said to you, you know, which option are you right now? Okay, most of us, okay, not everyone, okay, but most of us would say, hey, I'm option B, all right? Because I'm not running around going, I deny Jesus, and I deny Jesus, and all that stuff, and I believe in Jesus, and I'm trying to take steps with Jesus. But the reality is, until we are willing to get to a place where we deny ourselves because we have decided to live for a different king in a different kingdom, we will experience that disconnect that we've been talking about through the series. Because we can't truly follow Jesus and follow the flesh at the same time, because eventually the flesh will win, and when the flesh wins, we won't experience the integrated life that we have been created to experience. Now, let me tell you why that is. And I'm going to give you two reasons why that is. And as I talk about this, for some of you, this is exactly what you are experiencing right now, and you don't even know it. You know, for some of you, as we've been talking about the whole disconnect idea, you go, okay, I can kind of resonate with that. I mean, there's something that's not right there. You know, you might describe it as you're stuck, maybe you're apathetic or you're indifferent. You're kind of like, hey, I want to, but then I just kind of take steps back and all that stuff. You know, you may not realize it, but this is at the heart of it right here. And so let me give you just two reasons why we can't experience the integrated life if we just continue, if we don't deny ourselves. Here's the first reason. We'll be unsatisfied. We'll be unsatisfied. All of us have a story where we really wanted something, and then we got what we wanted, and we were satisfied for like 20 seconds. And then something new came out, and we were like, okay, now I want that. After college, I got a brand new red Mustang 5.0 GT, 5-speed. I mean, this baby was beautiful. And it meant a lot to me because when I went through high school and all this stuff, I was the kid who drove the beater around, okay? The beater car. In fact, one of the cars I drove, it was this big yellow station wagon. Some of you are like, what is a station wagon, okay? You don't want to know if you don't know. This big yellow station wagon, the thing was 15 years old, okay? And I'm driving in high school, and it was yellow, and because it, it's 15 years old, it was just faded yellow, and then it had all these, rust spots on the side, and so my dad took yellow paint and painting it, but it was dark yellow, okay? So that spotted up the car all over the place, And I used to drive it to school, and kids would make fun of me all the time. They called it the banana-mobile and all that stuff. And so this for me, with all my emotional scars, I get this car, and I am just excited as all get out. And so I ended up having I spent all this money. I did engine work, I did gear work, put different tires on it. I mean, this thing was louder and faster than I could ever imagine. And I'm driving around town, and I'm like, ladies, look at who I am now, And I'm just driving around town with this thing. I think I will never want a new car than this one ever again. Fast forward 6 months, and the new model comes out. And the new model, it has a better interior, better front end, bigger engine, and more technology. And so I even wrestled with, do I trade in this car? Because now I want this car. And see, we will never be satisfied because the flesh is like an appetite. The more you feed it, the more it actually grows. But if you do the flip side and you deny yourself and follow Jesus, we will eventually become very satisfied. Some of you know this because you've had this experience before. When it doesn't matter that when you don't get what you want, and you don't need to get what you want to be happy, when you're in that place, you are in a very good place in your life. You see, we're truly happy not when we get what we want, but that's what we're told. If you get what you want, that's you'll be happy. Why do you think you keep wanting more and wanting more and wanting more? We're truly happy when we're content. And so Jesus says, if you're going to get there, you got to stop following those constant desires and feelings you want for more, and you need to trade those in for something outside of you and bigger than you. The second reason that we will not experience that integrated life that Jesus is talking about if we continue to follow the flesh is this one. We will end up disintegrated. Now, most of us, we've had this experience as well. You watch the media for a short period of time, or you're on social media and you're kind of scrolling through, and then here's what happens. You just get this feeling like, oh my gosh, all the world is in chaos. And it's like, okay, what's going on in our country? What's going on in the world? Everything's spinning out of control. I mean, oh my gosh, what's going wrong? I mean, it's just all of a sudden you just spend there, and it's like your headspace just continues to go. When we let the flesh drive our life, when we let the flesh drive society at large, and we all want what we want, what do you think happens when we don't get what we want? People respond with anger, anxiety, fear. They start doing irrational things just because. Now, if you've been around little kids, you've seen this play out because this starts at a very young age. I have twin boys, and they went through this period where they just played with Legos all the time. I mean, it's a great period when kids go through that. And so I decided, to be the good dad that I am, I decided to buy them a Star Wars Lego set, because every kid needs a Star Wars Lego set, to be complete. And so one day they're playing with their Star Wars Lego set that I had bought them, and all of a sudden they started fighting over the Luke Skywalker Lego. And I could hear them fighting in there and fighting there. Well, then one of them finally won, and here's what I hear. My life is ruined! Now, hopefully, we grow out of that sort of reaction at some point in our life. But the reality is, when we don't get what we want, we still express it, but we just express it a little bit differently. For some of us, we start to manipulate, we control, we get angry, and that might even be blowing up at someone, or we give them the cold shoulder. Or we start to be driven by fear and anxiety, or for some of us, we start to do things and justify doing things that we know are wrong. And when we get to this point, here's what's happening to us. We don't even realize this. Your soul and my soul was made by God and for God. And so when anything else is in the center of our soul, we begin to hemorrhage. We begin to experience conflict. We begin to experience anxiety and anger. We begin to experience tension in our body and in our mind. And for many of us, we've experienced this before, and here's what we think. We just think, well, if I get what I want, if I get the Luke Skywalker Lego, then everything will be okay. But then Jesus tells us that the solution isn't for us to get what we want. The solution isn't the Luke Skywalker Lego. The solution is we need to reintegrate our soul around its center, because that's how God made us. Most of us, we live with this belief that we'll have peace and we'll have contentment in our lives through the rearranging our circumstances. When things just turn out the way we want, then everything in my life will be okay. And if that's what you believe, you don't realize this. That is causing you frustration with God, with people, and it's causing you to be very cynical the world around you. And the reason why that is because as you kind of go around living your life is just like one big game of whack-a-mole for you. It's like, okay, I have this problem. Oh, I got this problem solved, but then, now there's this problem. Oh, I've taken care of this situation. Oh, but now I got this situation over here to taken care of. And then what do you do about the problems that you can't fix? It's like just this never-ending cycle that keeps going. But on the flip side, when we deny ourselves and we follow Jesus, we are on a journey to reintegrate our soul around its proper center. And even when our world is a mess, and all of us here have stories about our world being a mess. Maybe it's a family mess, or it's a relational or financial mess, but for some of you, it's a physical mess. And even when the world around us is a mess, and let's be honest, it is a mess, we are in a place of peace and contentment through following Jesus, because now our soul is anchored to the very thing it is designed to be anchored to. So Jesus says to get there, we have to be willing to deny ourselves, take up our cross, and then begin to follow him. Personally, this topic right here that we were talking about, I have been wrestling, and also very excited, but I have been wrestling with this topic personally for months now. And that's why I was kind of excited to give the message, because I know it's a very tough topic. In fact, I actually gave a talk very similar to this to the staff, and now hoping they're wrestling with it as well, because this is really at the heart of things, more so than we might realize it. This is the thing right here that's holding many of us back from really stepping into what Jesus really has invited us to step into. And so as a part of this journey, I came up with this prayer, that I'm going to share with you. And it's not a very elegant prayer. It's not worded really well, but this has just been kind of working for me, and I want to share it with you. Maybe you'll do this, pray this as well. And here's my prayer I've been praying. Hey, Jesus, help me to say no to me and yes to you. Help me give my life completely to you, because I trust that following you leads to real life. And when I say no to me, the me I'm talking about is just that flesh part, that constant desire and feelings for self-fulfillment, to do what I want to do whenever I want to do it, not caring what anyone else or what God wants to do. And so, can I just challenge you? Are you willing to pray this daily? And I start with prayer because when this topic resonates and really hits at your soul, it's going to cause you to wrestle. And so, because of that, we need to start with prayer, but we don't stop with prayer. I want to encourage you to do the second part. Are you willing to do this daily? Are you willing to have the courage to take the step and begin to wrestle with what it means to deny yourself in your life so that you can follow Jesus? And I want to just give you a few examples of what this might look like for you. And I just came up with these examples, okay? These might be your examples. Your examples might be very different than this. Here are a couple of examples. Denying yourself may be as simple as you getting up 15 minutes early to start the day with God by reading your Bible and praying, rather than sleeping in or starting your day with social media. Denying yourself, maybe you start investing in your home life more, rather than staying out later because you're escaping the real problems at home. Denying yourself is admitting and getting help with the addiction that you have, rather than lying to yourself and to other people. We just talked about the idea of moving God's mission forward by using the gifts and abilities that God has given us to serve. And here's the thing, that's a calling on all of our lives. For most of us, the flesh is saying, I don't have time. I don't want to do that. I can't be used, all that good stuff. Denying yourself is to look at that and go, hey, maybe I need to take that step, even though I don't feel like it, because I know God has invited me and called me to do that. For some of you, you have been blessed financially. Denying yourself is wrestling with what does it mean to live with radical generosity rather than always going bigger, better, and newer. Denying yourself might be saying no, or saying yes, or breaking up, or moving out, or giving, or sacrificing, or forgiving. You know when you're really doing this. When you're starting to wrestle with things you never thought you'd wrestle with. I want to close with something that I bet probably most of us have never really thought about before. The reason Jesus died wasn't just so that we didn't have to. Part of the reason that he died was to show us the way that to experience life, and for us to experience life, it first required a death. You see, Jesus first died, and then what did he do? And then he rose. And what Jesus was doing is he was tapping into a pattern that is built into our creation. And for many of us, we don't even know this. And the pattern is this: the pattern of dying and then rising. Every time we sit down for a meal, we experience this whole dynamic. Every time, you have hamburgers or chicken, this, an animal had to die so that we could have life. Now, you might be being, well, I'm a vegan, Okay, a plant had to die so you could have life. And so what was Jesus showing us? He was showing us a pattern that is built into creation, that for us to experience life in our life, there first has to be a death. And so Jesus says something that is built and webbed into creation already, that you got to deny yourself, you got to take up your cross, and then and only then will you be able to understand what does it mean to truly follow me. And if you would be willing to daily just set that and give that towards God, I'm telling you, eventually you experience the life that Jesus is talking about. But you got to get to a place where you trust that Jesus knows how to get us to a better life, then we know how to get ourselves to a better life. But until we get to that place, there'll always be this disconnect that we're talking about. Because we'll always try to control, and we'll always manipulate, and we'll always say, okay, I'll pick and choose what I want to do and not want to do, and here's the thing. God will just let us go because we are just following the flesh. But when we get to that place, when we say, okay, I trust that beyond this cross is a resurrection. That we get to this place where we say, God, I trust that beyond this death, this denial of that myself, is a brand new life. And so here's what we're going to do as we kind of wrap up our time. I want to provide some space for us to respond in some way. Because my prayer is that this would kind of really cause you to wrestle in some way. And for some of you, if you're mad, that's actually good because it hit the chord. And that's exactly what it's supposed to do. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to pray for us. And then the band is going to just play a song. And if you want to, be a part of that by singing and all that stuff, hey, that's great as well. If you want to pray at your seat and have the time to do that, that's great. We're also going to have some people that are up here that would love to serve you in any way by praying for you. And so feel free during that time to come up and just get prayer in any way. But just is this the time where you just, okay, God, here's where I am with this. And here's what it means for me, God, moving forward, to really deny myself, take up a cross, and follow you. Let me pray for us. Father, this is tough stuff. I mean, God, this is really at the heart of it because we are so used to just bending towards not denying ourselves. I mean, we just kind of do what we ever want to do, and then we just kind of ask, hey, God, would you follow me? Would you follow me? Would you follow me? And you come along and say, it's not the way it works. You got to get to a place where you got to say no to you so that you can say yes to something greater and better. You got to be willing to die to some things so that you can experience the life of some better things. So, Father, I pray that you just search our hearts. You allow us to be open, that you would just move powerfully, and that we would have the courage to take some steps and step into this very, very challenging obstacle that's in the front for, I would think, almost all of us here. And God, in doing so, we would really find life. And it's the kind of life that only is found through following you. And I pray this in your name. Amen.
Came to the world you created, trading your crown for a cross. You willingly died, your innocent life paid the cost. Counting your status as nothing, the King of all kings came to serve. Washing my feet, covering me with your love. If more of you means less of me, take everything. If all of you is all I need, take everything. You are my life and my treasure, the one that I can't live without. Here at your feet, my desires and dreams I lay down. Oh, and here at your feet, my desires and dreams I lay down. Oh, if more of you means less of me, take
So let's take that challenge to take up our cross and to deny ourselves so that we would receive and experience the full life that Jesus has invited us to do. And if anything you heard today was encouraging to you at all, I would just ask that you would do this. Give this video a thumbs up on YouTube, and then share today's link on your favorite social media channel as a way for others to be able to find and be encouraged by this video as well. And then subscribe to our YouTube channel so that way you'll be notified when other helpful content is released throughout the week. And next week, we're going to continue our series, The Great Disconnect, as we're going to discover how all of us can come together to help each other actually close this gap when it comes to us following Jesus. So you'll want to be here for that. Join us in person in Greenfield or online. And don't join us alone. Bring a friend. And remember, as we're doing this throughout this week, we are partnering with God to bring the hope of Jesus into every home. Hey, thanks so much for joining us. Have a great day.
And you're going